In my opinion, I believe that there are a lot of food manufacturers out there that are really lying to you. False claims on the product. There's packaging phrases and marketing ploys and all these techniques to really get you confused. But you end up buying a product that is misleading you because it's not really true what's on the package. Is your wheat bread really white bread? My philosophy is, if it's white, don't take a bite. So I mean white as white flour, white pasta, white rice, white bread, sugar. All those things are white, and those things are generally high on the glycemic index. They are part of risk factors for heart disease, high cholesterol, weight gain. They can raise your blood sugar. They are stripped of their natural nutrients because they are ultra processed and refined. So white foods are not the best choices for your diet. So again, my philosophy, if it's white, don't take a bite. Now, before we really get into the nitty-gritty of this, I just want to give you an example. You can go to the grocery store, you can buy a loaf of bread, and it can look great. I mean, it can look healthy, it can look brown, it can have great packaging and say wheat and grain and all these different words on the packages. And it can actually be white bread made with white flour, but dyed brown. Yes, I know what you're thinking. You're like, what? How can they do this? But yeah, that's happening. Manufacturers are actually taking white bread, white flour, and dyeing it to make it look healthy, to make it look like it is a bread made of whole grain. So you may be asking, well, what is the difference between refined flour and 100% whole wheat flour? Well, the difference is refined flour has had the best parts of the whole wheat kernel removed, and that would be the bran and the germ, and then the only thing that's left is the endosperm. And that middle part, the endosperm, is what makes white flour. And the best parts of the whole wheat kernel, which is the bran and the germ, those are the things that are nutrient powerhouses. They are packed full of fiber and nutrients. Well, that is removed to make white flour, and that is why white flour has to be enriched just to be used as an ingredient in America. It's required to be enriched because everything has been taken away. All the nutrients have been stripped from it. It's so processed, basically nothing is left. So they take all the natural nutrients out, and then they have to add synthetic nutrients back in. So I'm going to read you off a list of basically buzzwords that you need to be aware of when you're in that bread aisle. So you know exactly what you're buying and exactly what you are eating and feeding your families. In my opinion, there's a lot of things out there that food manufacturers are putting on labels and packages, and it's just flat out misleading. So number one, if the package says whole grain white, all that means is that it's actually white bread that's been dyed, or maybe there's a small percentage of whole wheat flour that's being used, but it's basically just white bread in disguise. There's no stipulations, no regulations for any manufacturer using that claim, so it's really just white bread. If the package says 12 grain, 9 grain, 7 grain, that doesn't mean anything. All it means is that, usually, is that the 12 grains have been sprinkled on the crust. And so when you look in the package and you see all these great grains on the top of the package and on the top of the crust, and it looks so healthy, there's no regulations for this claim. So literally it could be white bread that is dyed brown with sprinkled grains on top, and that's what they're calling 12 grain, 9 grain, or 7 grain. If a product says made with whole grain, all that means is that they're actually using a majority of the flour is coming from white flour and a small percentage is coming from whole wheat or from another type of grain flour. So they could literally be using 95% white flour and 5% grain flour, and they can still claim made with whole grain. So unless it says 100%, it's not worth choosing. If it says good source of whole grain, again, that doesn't mean anything. Unfortunately, that's a claim that's being used. The FDA has started to discourage it and may possibly cause that claim to be eliminated from packaging because it's basically saying that it's a third 1/3 of your whole grains for the day, which isn't actually true based on how many ingredients the companies are using. So it's really just confusing all around. So don't be misled by a claim that says a good source of whole grain. That doesn't mean anything. Now the next one, this is really confusing and a lot of people get stumped by this one. If the package says wheat flour, if that's all it mentions, it doesn't say 100%, it just says wheat flour, that means that it is 75% white flour, 25% wheat flour. So you're actually buying white bread. I mean, the majority of the flour is white flour. And it has to say 100% in order for it to truly be a whole grain product. Now, after I've talked about all those claims and all those confusing things that you can read on packages, what do you really need to know to choose the right bread? Well, skip all of the packaging on the front. Skip everything. Turn the package right around and look at the ingredient list. And the first ingredient on that ingredient list needs to say 100% whole wheat, or 100% whole, and then it can have a different type of grain. So maybe if it's rye bread, it can say 100% whole rye or 100% whole oat. But it has to have that 100% in there as the first ingredient. If it's further down on the ingredient list, then the rest of the flour is from refined flours. So that is the thing to look for. Now here's another little tip if you're in the grocery store and you're so worried about what bread to choose. If it is heavy bread, if it's heavier than a lot of the other breads there, chances are it is more nutrient dense. So if you pick up a loaf of bread and it weighs nothing, then that usually means that it's more air than anything else. It's just fluffy and there's not enough nutrients in it. And if you pick up another bread and it's really dense, then that's going to be heavier, and that usually means it's more nutrient dense. So I want to give you some pointers on what are some good brands and some good things to look for when you are buying some bread. So my favorite #1 best bread is Ezekiel bread. That is a sprouted grain bread that is made by the company called Food for Life. It is an excellent bread. It's very hearty. It's very filling. Some other good ones are men's and women's bread. Obviously, based on the name, they have different nutrients that are perfect for the men's physique and what they need, and then same thing for the women's profile, the nutrients that they need. And there's a few bread products out there that are made by some more national bread companies. So Arrow Wheat, Pepperidge Farms. Now, not everything they make are good choices. You just need to look at the ingredient list. And that is really the best advice I can give you when looking at bread. Skip the packages, even crackers, cereal, pasta. Skip the packaging. Skip the front of the box, because that's where you can get really confused, and turn it over and immediately look to the ingredient list, because the ingredient list will not lie. Now that you've heard all this, go into your pantry and look and see what kind of bread you got. And hopefully you don't have white bread in disguise. And if you do, now you know how to choose the right type of bread. And thank you so much for watching. As always, we're endeavoring to bring you applicable, very good information. So please subscribe. There's more good stuff coming. And leave your comments. And see you next time. Bye-bye.
If you liked this video, we have hundreds of more alternative videos ranging from sexual health to psychology to mind control. So if you liked it, go ahead and click on me to enter the Psychetruth channel.